Welcome to Focus on Family. Do you believe in ghosts? If not, you will after you hear from our guest tonight. He is a real-life ghost hunter, and he will be sharing some of his ghost stories. Please welcome your host, Kathy McCarthy, and her guest, Mr. Angelus Perez.
Well, thank you, Rocky, for that wonderful introduction. That was awesome. So welcome, Angelus, to the show. I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me here.
So you're a real-life ghost hunter.
A little on the side here and there, yes.
So tell me, how did you get started in ghost hunting?
How did I get started? Well, it started back when I was a child, and it was during an experience with my uncle at the time. He had unfortunately been into practicing the black arts, satanic worshiping and all that stuff, and that kind of magic stuff, and he got me involved in it by showing me some of his tricks, so to speak, and I didn't know then what I know now, that he was actually using a form of what it's called crystalmancy, or it's a kind of magic that you hear about that the Nostradamus used, looked into, the little pool of water and divined the future, people look into the crystal ball. It's along that line, but he was practicing the dark side of that.
Wow.
And it was when I was very, very young. So it got me interested in this really early. When I was young, I didn't understand what it was. And now we would call it perhaps evil. But back then, it's just I knew there was something wrong with his room every time I walked by it.
Really?
Yes. He was attempting to curse me.
Oh, wow.
Nice
That's
uncle.
pretty scary.
Yeah.
So how did you figure out that this was evil and then go to ghost hunting in a more in a way to help people? Well,
I started studying up on it, and I actually read, I think, your famous book, The Amityville Horror, and when, that scared the hell out of me even back then, and I was like so intrigued, like, well, this is very similar to what my uncle was doing. What is this stuff? So that book, reading that book and getting to understand that, well, this happened to a normal family, and the family found a way to, technically help themselves. So that was my catalyst, my way of saying, well, they can protect themselves against this, and this is a little bit more intense than just a regular ghost or haunting. Well, then I can handle anything if I can figure out how they took care of their problem.
So you figured out how to do this, or did you get inspired by this family, or
yes.
How did you?
I was inspired. Well, later in the late 80s, I met George Lee Lutz, which is the man. This incident was supposed to happen to his family, Kathy Lutz and daughter and children and the dog.
And this happened out in Long Island, right? Was it out?
Yeah, Long Island, Amity, Long Island. Yes, okay. But I met Lee in Arizona, Scottsdale to be exact.
So Lee would be George.
George Lee Lutz.
Lutz. Okay.
Yes. He passed away back in 2006. So, but during the time, it wasn't that he was teaching me how to ghost hunt. I was actually learning from his experience. He was telling me things that were not in the book, was never publicized, and like basically, how did you survive this? How did you get away from it? How did you protect yourself? This is like the worst case scenario. If I can figure this out, the rest is just going to be,
So how did you contact him?
I met him at a psychic fair. It was,
oh, wow.
I was interested in the paranormal and the supernatural at the time, and I figured going to a psychic fair would introduce me somehow, magically or accidentally or coincidentally, to knowing more, or knowing what I know now, which that's how I met Lee. He was actually doing public speaking at the time, and went up to him, asked him a few questions, and after that, we hit it off well. We had a coffee chat afterwards, and we were friends ever since until his, passing away.
Oh, okay. And so how did you take it from there? You just created your own items to ghost hunt with?
Well,
or,
yes.
How do you even advertise that?
I don't advertise it because there's two types of ghost hunters, ghostbusters. There's actually a difference. There's parapsychologists, there's ghost hunters, and there's ghostbusters. The difference is one is just collecting information for scientific purposes and for their own database, which primarily that's what I was. In Arizona I had a UFO encounter, so that, to me, when I started studying the paranormal, supernatural, these things were the same to me. They all couldn't get them in a laboratory and test them. So you had to investigate them. So it's the same technique. So I took these, made my first devices. I have a degree in electronics, so that helped me build some of my devices. And before any of these devices ever existed, I was using electronic gauge meters, multimeters, radioactive, Geiger counters, all kinds of stuff, and even dowsing rods.
So where would you test these items out? How did you know they worked?
Because there's people that have been doing this for centuries, if not millennia. So this is not new stuff. Every religion, all the upper echelons of every religion has the libraries full of this stuff, and people educated in all this stuff. You just have to kind of ask the right questions. And like Lee, I would ask one person, and who do you know who might be able to help me, and they'll refer me, and so on and so forth. And I would just bump into a lot of people after that, and they all give me part of their stories, and I started piecing together the mosaic, the big puzzle, so to speak, because it's more than just ghost hunting, and I thought it was just ghost hunting. But from starting with so-called demons, or what they call the preternatural or the inhuman spirits in the field. But it started from there, and then it moved way up to, oh, now I can detect them, and I know what to detect, and where to go, and it's a pattern always. There's always a pattern, and I know after so many of these investigations, I know what to look for, what to expect.
So have you had any experiences with any other people who inspired you?
Yes. Well, George Lee Lutz told me about the Warrens and how they were instrumental in helping him with the Amityville Horror. So when I came back to Connecticut, he moved to Las Vegas at the time at the end of the 80s, and I came back to the early 90s to Connecticut. And I kind of sought them out. I knew they were going to be lecturing at a nearby college. I went to them and told them, by the way, George Lee Lutz sends his love. And one thing led to another. They were interested. And then I went on a few, I went to many of their lectures, private lectures, sit-ins, a case. I worked in their, what they call the occult museum a few times. And Ed Warren has a sense of humor and a half.
Really?
He would leave me in there by myself, thinking he was in there, and he's actually at the house.
Oh, nice.
And yes, and it would take me. It only takes about 2 minutes to walk across, the museum. It took me like 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, I think I'd be a little.
So, but I learned. I've been in that museum at night and experienced things, and
really,
yeah, and with the Warrens, I've seen things.
So tell us some of those experiences.
Some of the experiences go from seeing like shadows, I don't see them directly. Peripherally, I see them like shadows, things there. The only time I actually saw something in front of me was like a diamond-shaped, triangular or pyramid-shaped object about this big, and it just appeared in the thin air. And I'm like, and I was sitting with my now wife, but then fiance. Do you see that? And she said, no, I don't see anything. I said, are you kidding me? It's right there in front of us. And I would turn away, and I wouldn't see it. So I'm thinking, if it was in my mind, I should see it in my mind no matter where I turn my head. But once I turned back, it was there. So I started taking notes of it. And sure enough, after I finished, and it seemed to understand my thoughts, because as I was looking at it, I'm like, it has symbols on it, but I can't see them. I said, I wish that would turn to the left. And then it turned to the left. And I wish it turned to the right, then turn to the right. And I jotted everything down, and I said, I guess I'm done, and it just vanished. I haven't seen it since. Stuff like that.
Have you ever experienced any physical, okay.
Yes. That's a long list, but I would say, yes, from, a little tapping on the arms, shoulder, slapping across the face,
wow.
kind of push down the steps a little. I didn't fall, but if I...
And this was totally, nobody was there?
Oh, no, I was all alone, and that's what was made it interesting. I go, okay.
No, was this at someone's house?
Oh, God, I don't even remember where it was. I think it was in Connecticut, but if it's where I think it is, I think the family's still there, so I don't really want to bring up there. But yes, but these are all over the country, so I get them mixed up because I've been to so many of them.
So you do this all over the country?
I did. Now I do it mostly in Connecticut.
Okay.
Yes, because again, I don't do it. There's two types of people who do this kind of work. Those who do it part-time and those who do it for a living. You got to make money off of it. to make money off of you have to advertise. It's like any business. You got to market, you got to get the word out, get a website. And but for the others, I don't want publicity. I'm not looking for that. I'm just looking to help the people I'm dealing with. So, and it's not for the making the money. It's for the experience, the knowledge, the know-how, and helping the families.
So
people.
If somebody thinks they might have a ghost or a spirit in their house, you know, first, what would be a sign that you may have something going on?
Sign. The patterns I've seen more often than not would be, it could be like 90 degrees, it could be 100, it could be a heat wave, yet some part of the house or building has a cold room or a spot. I mean, you walk into that spot, it feels like you're walking like into a refrigerator. But the temperature shouldn't be, there's nothing electrically, air conditioning wise, there's nothing structural about the building that should cause such a cold spot. And you can use devices and will measure the temperature drop, but it's not just a temperature drop, because that's the illusion. It's more or less, it's an energy vortex, and if you can see it, it's like a spinning tornado, where these energies come and go, and they take the physical heat, thermal energy, and other types of energies from the environment to manifest that doorway, so to speak. So when you walk into this, it's not a cold you're feeling as much as a lack of thermal radiation. It's a sucking of energy from your body, so you get cold. If you take batteries and put it in such a cold spot, they get drained very quickly.
Wow, that's interesting. Any other signs that?
Other signs would be, it depends on what's there. It could be if it's a poltergeist, it could be noises, things falling down, you know, things moving by themselves, and you look and then you turn around and then that's in a different area. It can be dishes crashing to the floor in, you know, in the kitchen and nobody's there, or that cabinet's opening up when you turn around and it closed, you know, again. Sometimes some brutal beatings.
Really? Now, is this common?
No, the bad ones, the malicious ones are not as common, thank goodness. The other ones that are more common is you might hear a voice whisper in your ear. You might feel that cold spot, but not in one spot. It kind of moves with you, or it went through you. You can feel it coming from one direction, leaving from the other direction. You might hear, you know, footsteps.
What about an odor? I've heard that sometimes people smell a certain odor.
It depends on what it is. It can be anything from cologne, perfumes, roses, food, cigarettes.
What if it's a foul smell? What
and
is
then
that?
you're dealing with something a little bit more negative, but not necessarily all negative. It could be associated with a very sick and dying individual who, you know, been, like one case was this room smelled very badly, but it was really supposedly a spirit of a lady who passed away there, but she was dying of a disease that was her skin rotting, so she was decaying, and the smell of that was, so it wasn't something negative. It was something of a past memory, a past nature.
So how do you know what's there? How do you know what you're dealing with?
Well, if it's a ghost or spirit, I should say, a memory or entity, you can actually talk to it, and it's just like talking to a human being. If you treat it with respect, it will treat you with respect. If you treat it like it's trying to get your attention and you're ignoring it, it might get a little annoyed by that. Now, the other end, the inhuman spirits, that's a different thing. That's when you're dealing with something where it's quite obvious. It's like you walk into an area, the place where it's most manifested, and you just feel this sense of doom, this like you just walked into a vacuum. You feel hopelessness, you feel terrified, and you don't know why. You feel like there's, you know, you feel like you're going to die.
Is this only in a specific room that this happens, or is this
no, it's only in when it's dealing with the inhuman, or the demonic, as it's called.
So people that are walking around who are maybe depressed or feeling, could it be that they're dealing with some kind of
well, that's so
spirit?
funny you would say that. I remember Ed saying his dream was to make a hospital, and in this hospital they would treat those who would be misdiagnosed as being mentally, with a mental disorder, when they're actually under oppression or possession. But under those circumstances, it's dealing with, how can I put it? It's dealing with something that's inside or around the person, that's doing everything to make that person, Well, if it's dealing with inhuman spirits, their purpose is to drive you insane.
A human spirit?
Inhuman, excuse me.
Inhuman spirit.
Inhuman spirit.
Okay.
Purpose is to drive you insane, drain you, because you got to remember they need energy to manifest what they do. In this universe, the laws of physics abide, so you can't go against the laws of physics. When they're here, this is our universe. For them to function here, to move anything, they need to take energy from somewhere like a battery and store it. People are the best source of, sustenance, food.
So this George Lee Lutz was looking to open up a hospital.
Oh no, Ed Warren was looking up to.
Oh, Ed Warren. Okay.
Yes, he said to me when I was with him, open up a hospital where you take these people who are really not mentally disabled or mentally challenged, but they're actually being oppressed or possessed, and work with them on a spiritual level, while then diagnosing the ones who do have physical abnormality or chemical imbalance and send them to the right doctors.
So how would you know? How would you know which is which?
It depends. Well, if it's inhuman and it's possessing you or oppressing you, usually holy relics or self-mitigation annoys them, makes them come out of the woodwork, so to speak, or what it's also called as holy provocation, where you're throwing holy water or you're using holy relics from, and it could be many different types of religions because they all have their holy relics and holy water or whatever, and this, in the presence of these entities, drive them insane. They can't stand it. Then they become active and it's obvious, and you can start to record them.
So any person who might be saying that they're...
My uncle is a good example. And before, near the time of his, just a few months before he passed away, he was under oppression, and he would come into the house and he would talk also in a different voice, which wasn't his. And it was usually deep, guttural almost. And it would then, threaten me, and then I would say, okay, just sit down, uncle, relax, in that chair. And he would sit there, and then I would start to cough and go crazy, and he can't stay in the house and leave. And my friends would ask me, what was that about? And I said, I turned holy incense on. But why was he acting so fidgety when he was on the couch over there? I said, pick up the couch. And he picked it up, the cushion, and there was, I think it was a holy crucifix that was given to me by somebody who was at, Rome, the Vatican, as a gift. Mm-hmm. So I said, they know when it's there, and they know when it's there. So he was under some kind of influence for him to be running out the door, right after I lit supposedly a candle.
Did he ever get better?
No, he committed suicide. That's the ultimate aim of these things. If you don't get help and you allow these into your lives, the first attempt is to drive you crazy, drain you, oppress you, possess you, and then kill you. That's usually the pattern. That's why it was very fascinating when George Lee Lutz and his family escaped this. I'm like, well, how did they get out of this pattern? And, they sought help.
So can you get out of the pattern?
Yes.
Well, first, how do you get into the pattern?
Well, okay, into the pattern. If it's a regular ghost, I really won't be concerned about it because ghosts really don't have the power, or they're not the ones that you should be concerned about. If you treat them with respect and tell them to please keep it down if they want to stay or leave if they don't mind, they may be cooperative. When it's dealing with the inhuman spirits, you usually have to invite them in. There's only one way to get them, is to invite them in. And they usually use our ignorance, our lack of understanding. Like you go play with a Ouija board, or you play with tarot cards. Now, the cards by themselves and the board, they're just paper and ink. They don't mean anything. You can serve tea on them. It's not important. But once you start using them and manipulating them in such a way, then they become a magnet. Then they start creating a door, and then it becomes very dangerous.
So you have to be careful when using these
There's no
things.
Careful. Don't use them.
Just don't use them.
Yes,
now, they sell Ouija boards in
like games.
Toys R Us.
Oh, yes. But they sell drugs, too, down the street in the corner at a CVS and all that can kill you. It says on the label, fatality, possibilities. So what? People who sell it don't believe necessarily in what the dangers are. People sell tobacco every day, and they refuse to hear it's bad for your health. Same thing goes here. It's capitalism. So it's the game itself is just a game. If you start to use it to try to foretell the future or talk to the dead and all that,
You might be opening up a door that you don't want to open up.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I made a joke many times in the past where people get annoyed with me, and it wasn't meant to be insensitive. It's to make a point. I tell people, if you're going to play with something more safe, like drugs. Yeah. That's how dangerous.
Like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So, have you had any an encounter where it was like really one of your scariest encounters? It sounds like you've been dealing with a lot of different types of entities.
Believe it or not, the scariest thing I can remember is not even with an entity, so to speak. In researching this stuff, you come across other things that are interrelated. So in other words, you think it might be a ghost, it might not be a ghost. It might be something natural. It might be something natural. It might be a UFO. It might be a UFO. It might be Bigfoot. So they're all really interrelated. There's no categorizing anymore. One may lead to another. So while in Arizona, I remember the northern part of Sedona, there was this area, and I say area, geographic area, circle, about 12 feet almost in diameter, and there was no entities that I can tell or ascertain, but I walk into this area and I would feel terrified. I mean, I'm like apprehensive, and it's like I'm having a panic attack, and I'll step back a few feet and I'm fine. I said, what was that about? Having a panic attack? Walked again, and there it goes again. It's like and then back up. It's like I could turn it on and off. So I'm like, okay, let me find out where this is. Like it's like a field of some sort. And I didn't have any instruments at the time, so I would put a rock here, step in. Okay, I feel it. Step out. Okay, rock here, rock. And that's how I figured out. I was like a circle, almost 12 feet diameter. Outside the circle, everything was fine. You walk right into it, you felt terrified. And then I realized, okay, logically, there's something different about this piece of land, this piece of soil, this area that is affecting brains in such a way. Because in Ohio University and a few others around the country, they've taken electrodes and put them on people's heads, and they would put a mild electrical stimulus or magnetic stimulus, and people will have all kinds of euphoria, feeling of peace and tranquility and nirvana-like experiences. Then they'll have negative, scareful. They feel something is watching them, and then they're all alone inside this cabinet being monitored, or they feel that people are there or something's attacking them, and so you can trigger these things electronically. So whatever that was there, it was either natural or it was artificially produced.
And could you explain ever what that was, or just one of those things? It's
one of those things. If I could find it again, I can just bring you there and have you experience it. And that's the only thing about this ghost hunting stuff. 90% of the times, I usually show people how to do it, to experience it themselves. I don't tell them stories because technically I could be lying, I could be exaggerating, and many people do. Besides, anything worth learning cannot be taught. It has to be experienced.
Right.
So I would send somebody to have my experience so they can then understand and say, I got it. Because honestly, if I went home and I told you, hey, before I came here, a ship landed in my backyard and these aliens came on, it gave me the wisdoms of the universe, and they took off, and they said, tell everybody.
Yeah, right.
What's your proof? Well, they were here. They were in my backyard.
Right, who's going to believe you?
But if they say, listen, we'll be back noon, Christmas Day, 2015, you can bring a friend or two.
Mm-hmm. Then they experience what you experience.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just an example. That's not saying that did happen.
Right.
But that's how these things are. So I know areas where I know there's something still going on there, and I would send. Also, if a person is sensitive, I have to be careful, because if everybody has this ability, some people it's dormant, others a little latent, but with a little practice, with the right skills, you can learn how to pick up things by yourself without devices. And people who are born with this naturally, I have to be careful with them, because if they don't know how to control that, it will be overwhelming for them when they have these experiences. See, I don't have this experience, this natural gift. I have to work on it or use instruments to pick up something. But that's kind of good for me, because then when the sensitive people around me, or the mystics, or the the psychics are getting overwhelmed, I can at least still hold my ground and keep, taking notes.
Now, when you say people that are sensitive, are these people who have an intuition or a feeling or?
No, yes, but it's more intense. It's like you ever get a phone call and before you picked up the phone, you knew who was on the phone, or before the phone even rang, you thought of the person, that person called you. Deja vu, stuff like that.
Right.
Well, picture that, but so intense that I'll be talking to a person like you and I are from the table, across the table, and this has happened to me. And, we'll be talking, telling stories. The person over here will be watching us going, what is your problem? Both of you. And I'm like, what's going on? What are you talking about? You guys are laughing and joking, smiling, but you're not saying anything. And at first I'm thinking he's, or she or they, because there's more than one person making this up. It's a joke. But then we realized that individual was talking to me and vice versa, but we weren't using our lips. I was hearing her thoughts and vice versa, but I could have sworn she was talking to me.
And this happened to you?
Yes, in Arizona, yes. And I would cover our mouths and then just think the thought, not move the mouth. And I can hear her, she can hear. Only happened to one person and never before or since.
Wow.
It's interesting.
Well, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it was an accident. It's just, I don't even know what caused it. And we were friends until she passed away back 10 years ago. But it's like, okay, everybody has this. But some people are receivers, some people are transmitters, some people are sensitive. So everybody is, like the mutants you see on TV or the movies, the Wolverine and Cyclops. It's like everybody has the same gift. Say we're all mutants, but every mutant has a specific gift that it's honed in and tuned.
Their own unique type of
specific,
gift.
to them. And that's how human beings are. Or like the vampire Lestat and Anne Rice's novels, all of them had different powers, even though they were all vampires. So it's something like that. As human beings, we have the same gift. Some of us are like Casey's and Nostradamus of the world. Others become healers, while others become sensitive, ghost hunters, parapsychologists, investigators, ghostbusters.
So you're saying ghosts are real?
Ghosts are real, yes.
Ghosts are real.
Spirits are real, yes.
Well, we'll end on that note. So, wow, that was really interesting. I really appreciate you sharing all your experiences with us.
All right, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Focus on Family tonight. Special thanks to Angelus Perez, who is giving us his great stories and experiences. Until next time, happy haunting.